Shalom and welcome once again to Pearls of the Torah. I'm Moreh Matan, Pastor Matt McEwen, International Director for Ahavat Ammi Ministries, and I'm so glad to be with you once again to be diving into the Torah. Let us first, before we dive into Parashat Vayishlach, let us have our Torah blessing, and then we will get right into 7 points today in this narrative and a messianic insight with each. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to be engrossed, to be in the business of the Torah. So we have here Jacob wrestling with the angel. We have his name being changed to Israel, the reunion of Jacob and Esau, the massacre at Shechem, Jacob's return to Bethel, Bethel, the birth of Benjamin and the death of Rachel, and finally, Reuben's transgression. So let's jump right in here in Genesis chapter 32, starting at verse 24, looking at this idea of Jacob wrestling with this angelic being. First of all, in Judaism, there are many different theories as to who this angelic being is. Is it the guardian angel of Esau? Is it Hasatan? Is it a physical manifestation of God himself somehow? What is this angelic being? Well, if we look at this in a more a deep perspective, a more mystical perspective as to what's going on underneath, rather than trying to ask the question of who is this being that he's wrestling, we can go to the Zohar. The Holy Zohar has something to say about this, that this struggle at night, remember it happened during the night. This nocturnal struggle represents the soul's ongoing battle with spiritual adversaries. Emerging unscathed at dawn indicates that enlightenment, the enlightenment awaiting after the night of spiritual ignorance. I think this is a brilliant way to look at this. You know, we look at night as a time of, well, of course, it's a time of darkness. And we can look at the emerging dawn as this time of bringing light, of luminescence, of enlightenment. The messianic insight that we have here is this confrontation prefigures the Messiah's role, where he wrestles with spiritual and worldly challenges, paving the path for the ultimate dawn of redemption. This is such a wonderful way to look at this. And then point number 2 that we have today is something that's very interesting, the change of the name from Jacob to Israel. Now, from a more Hasidic perspective, the name Israel signifies a higher spiritual state. We know that we have talked in the past about Yisrael, one who struggles with God, or even Yashar El, which means to be upright with God. But look at this. When we look at the meaning of Yisrael, we could also look at this as indicating mastery over material and spiritual realms by rendering it Sar El, meaning the Prince of God. I always found it interesting when in Superman comic books, the names seem to be a bit Jewish. Jor-El, Kal-El. Here we have Sar-El, Prince of God. It's very interesting. Now, as a messianic insight, as a descendant of Israel, the Messiah will embody this mastery and be the bridge between humanity and the divine, leading to a harmonious era. You know, Moses, according to the sages of Israel, was said to be sort of half in the earthly realm and half in the spiritual realm. You know, because he was called the man of God. So he's like a combination of man and God, a combination of the physical realm and the spiritual realm. There are some commentaries that say that it's almost like from the waist down he was earthly, but from the waist up he was heavenly. Very interesting. Number 3, the reunion of Jacob and Esau. This is coming from Genesis 33. From a Hasidic understanding, Esau, representing raw materialistic drives, reconciling with Jacob, the embodiment of spirituality, symbolizes the potential harmony between the physical and spiritual worlds. But look at what happened here. There was a potential for a reconciliation, but Esau really didn't want it. As Jacob had presented him with these gifts, this procession of gifts and people, when they finally meet, and it says that Esau fell on Jacob's neck, there is a series of dots above a word Vayishkehu that says that this word kiss, it has dots over it, because if you spell it slightly differently, it means to bite. And these dots in the Torah scroll mean we're supposed to pay attention to this. So the idea is that there was a purported reconciliation, or the opportunity for a reconciliation, but what was really going on was an attack. At the very least, if it wasn't that he meant to kiss him as a greeting, but then was going to bite him on the neck, at the very least, these dots tell us that there's something to pay attention to. The other theory is that he acted as if he wanted to greet him wholeheartedly with a kiss, but his intention was not wholehearted. And this, of course, calls to mind Yeshua in the garden with Judas Iscariot. This, of course, calls to mind that. A kiss of greeting that is also a kiss of betrayal. So this is something that I think we need to think about, that we need to tease out in our minds, this connection of Esau representing the raw, base, animalistic desires, the uncorrected animalistic aspect of the soul, and then looking at Jacob, the embodiment of spirituality. Remember, as we've talked in previous weeks, when Jacob and Esau were in the womb, there was a struggle. And whenever their mother walked by a Jewish house of study, Jacob would become active. But whenever she would walk by a house of idolatry, then Esau would become active. And this, of course, portends what is going to be coming in the future. Number 4, the massacre at Shechem. I know if you remember, so Dinah, the sister, is taken captive, and the brothers go after her to rescue her, and they make this deal, you all need to be circumcised, and then of course they attack on the 3rd day after the circumcision, which is the day of most pain. If we look at this from the Zohar's perspective, the event in Shechem is symbolic of the spiritual contamination that can arise from unholy alliances and the necessary rectifications. We have to be very careful who we do business with, who we are in relationships with, who we choose to date, who we choose to marry. All of these things are very, very important. Even who we just are in a casual friendship with. As the saying goes, a rotten apple can spoil the whole bunch. It is true that if we get around bad companions, and the Bible throughout Proverbs and in many other places warns us about bad companions and bad influences. I think sometimes we only think that children can be victims of peer pressure, but that's not only the case with them. It's the case with adults. It could be the case with older people. We have to make sure that we are not being led astray, led down a bad path by listening to someone who does not align with our particular values. We have to be very careful. This is what Yeshua called being unequally yoked. When you put 2 oxen together with this yoke that goes over their necks, if one wants to go one way and one the other, it's never going to work. They're never going to get the job done. They have to go in the same direction and at the same pace. So this is so important when we talk about aligning ourselves, like I said, not just in relationships, but in business partnerships. Align yourself with people that share your values, people that are looking at things from a Torah perspective. Otherwise, you will get burned, and it will be very unfortunate. The messianic insight we have here is the Messiah will be instrumental in guiding humanity in distinguishing between holy and unholy, ensuring a world purified of spiritual contaminations. This is something that is so evident to us in the ceremony known as Havdalah, as a word that means separation, as we separate the holy from the common, or the holy from the profane, as it says in the Bible. The Shabbat is holy time. Just as the temple was holy space, the Shabbat is holy time. It's time that's set apart for a holy purpose. And so during that time, what we are doing is making a distinction between the regular work week, where we do just anything, and then that Shabbat, our day of rest, when we're supposed to keep that holy and to remember it. This is an important lesson for us all. Point number 5, Jacob's return to Bethel. This is in Genesis chapter 35 at the beginning of the chapter. The Sefer Yetzirah says that Bethel, Beit El, the house of God, symbolizes a place of spiritual elevation. Jacob's return indicates the cyclical journey of the soul, continuously seeking higher spiritual connection. I think sometimes it's important for us to go back to places that we were before, especially places where we had an encounter with God. It's sometimes good to mark those places. There are many times in the Bible where something significant happened and someone built a stone altar or a monument or put a plaque there, something to remind them that this is where it happened. This is the place where this miracle happened. Even when we have a victory in our lives, if you'll remember when Moses is reminding the children of Israel about the victories that they've had, they're about to go into the promised land, and he's reminding them, God's going to go before you. And if you don't believe me, just go back to that town where still the iron bed of this pagan king is. And it was so big, this giant was so big, he had to have a bed that was something like 14 feet long and 6 feet wide, something like that. It was really huge, and it was made of iron so that it would support his giant frame. Sometimes we need those touch points or those mementos, those, for lack of a better term, souvenirs that we have, like the iron bed of the giant king that God defeated for us, or like the altar made of stones, of 12 stones, to go back and look, or as it is said that Solomon set up markers of where the Red Sea was crossed. It's good for us to go back and have these touch points. Now, this idea of the Messiah too will guide humanity back to their Bethel, their Beit El, reconnecting them with their spiritual roots and elevating global consciousness. I can't wait until that time, which is known as the Messianic era, where we're all going to know, the Lord. We won't each have to tell the other to know the Lord. Everyone will know the Lord. What a wonderful thought that is. Number 6, the birth of Benjamin and the death of Rachel. This is in Genesis chapter 35. From a more Hasidic perspective, Benjamin's birth, followed by Rachel's death, represents the pain and sacrifice that often accompany spiritual births or revelations. I think it was so interesting and so poignant and so bittersweet as Rabbi Shapira told us about his friend Adi Carmi, who on the day that he is going to the circumcision of his grandson, that there are members of his family that were killed on October 7th during this horrible attack. How can we deal with this, of losing family members and welcoming family members in the same day? It's such a tragic thing. There have been things in my life where something sad happens on a happy day. My grandfather died on my wife's birthday. And so that's always a reminder of something bittersweet. We're celebrating my wife's birthday, but we're also marking the yahrzeit of my grandfather. These bittersweet experiences are all part of the human experience. And sometimes we need to take the good with the bad. Sometimes something or someone passes from this earth, they die. But on the other hand, somewhere else there is a birth. And I think this is something important for us to remember. And our messianic insight is this: the birth of the messianic era, while a time of enlightenment, may be accompanied by significant worldly transitions and sacrifices, echoing the intertwined events of birth and death. As the old world passes away, so to speak, there will be a new heaven and new earth created, the new Jerusalem coming out of the heavens, and everything will be remade. The one who makes all things new will be reigning on the throne of his father David, and that will be a time that will be like none other seen in history. It will absolutely be a wondrous, wondrous time. And finally, Reuben's transgression. From the Zohar, Reuben's act is not just a personal transgression, but a disruption in spiritual hierarchies affecting cosmic harmony. What we have to remember, we've said this almost every week in our Torah study here at Pearls of the Torah, is that one mitzvah has a ripple effect on the rest of the world. But so does one transgression. So does one sin. We have to understand that we are storing up treasure as merit for Israel when we do the mitzvot, we do the commandments of God. But also when we transgress the Torah, this is having for lack of a better term, a butterfly effect, a ripple effect across the world and in fact across the whole universe. The messianic insight is this: the Messiah will restore this balance, mending disruptions caused by past actions and leading the world into harmonious existence. Again, he's going to make all things new. The things are going to go together. Even animals are not going to kill one another. The lion will eat grass like an ox. The wolf and the lamb will lie down together. Children will put their hand into the serpent's den and not be harmed. This is going to be an unprecedented time, not seen since the Garden of Eden. And we are so looking forward to this. This is the result of the redemption, of the Geulah. This is something that we need to be working toward. Remember what it says in the writings of Peter in the Brit Chadashah, that we can hasten the coming of the Messiah by our actions, by living lives of holiness and devotion unto God. This is the type of thing that we need to be doing. We need to be doing the mitzvot. We need to be doing these acts of righteousness and kindness for the sake of Israel, and not to be seen by others to be congratulated by them. No, but for the glory of God, that they would see our good works and glorify our Father in heaven. I want to thank you for joining me in this quick study of this week's Torah portion, Vayishlach, and I hope it's been a blessing to you, and I pray that you would feel free to share this broadcast, subscribe to this channel, post it on your social media so that as many people as possible can get this message of the Torah. Thank you once again for joining with me. Once again, I'm Pastor Matt, Moreh Matan, and I wish you shalom.